Hi, I'm Kaylin, and today we're going to be learning how to set up basic shifts in TNA. We're going to start off with a day shift, and then we're also going to create a night shift and the respective payroll shifts for that then. So what you can do is, if you've got your user module open, you can from this module go to the configuration module, which is where you need to be in to set up these shifts. If you look on the top right hand side of your user module, you will see the change to configuration module icon. So we need to get to the configuration module. If a Jumpstart Windows pops up, you can close that. We can set up shifts via the Jumpstart, which will show you setting up your categories, your daily shifts and all that. There are some steps that are skipped in this wizard, so my preference is not to use the Jumpstart. If you do get stuck, you can use that. So I'm going to close this Jumpstart. The first thing that we need to do is we're going to set up day shifts and a night shift. Now I want the day shift to go to a normal time category, and the night shift I want to go to a night column. So we need to set up those two types of shift time categories. If you go to setup and then shifts and shift time categories, the default ones will be listed here. So obviously I've got my normal, my overtime 1.5 and double time. I want to go and add another one for the night shift, and I am just going to call this night. It asks you, what do you want the effect to be on the total? Do you want this hours, this column, specifically now the night, do you want it to be added to the total columns or subtracted, or must it do nothing? I obviously want it to be included in that total, so I'm going to tick that. If you'd like to suppress this on any reports, you can also do that, and also then include it in the payroll if you want to. The only other thing that you need to set when you're creating extra time categories is under the advanced link. You need to make this user editable. The reason for this is that if you need to add any manual hours at some point for the night shift, you need to be able to edit that as a user. So now we've created the night column. I'm going to click on OK, and I'm happy with that. And the next step is to actually create the day shifts for each day, for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday through to Sunday. You need to do this under the daily shift set window. Now by default, if this is a clean installation of TNA, you will have some shifts here. If this is your existing setup, obviously you will have your shifts that have been previously set up here. You can take a look at these as examples. I'm going to create new ones for the day shift and then go through those steps with you so you can just see how this happens. So the first thing we need to do is add a code on the top here with all its descriptions. I'm just going to call this day shift. I'm actually going to say Monday to Friday. You can make this as descriptive as you'd like. If you want to, for some reason, let's put in this as well for the time so that we know what shift this is. Okay, and we could just click on OK. We've got our code with our description and all our information. Now we need to actually go and fill in the details for that daily shift that we've created. Now time slots is basically what you're going to specify here, the hours that are going to be allocated. So let's say we've got a shift from 7 till 4 o'clock. I don't want this shift to allocate any hours, paid hours before it starts. So if the guy comes in early, I don't want him to get paid for that. Now if you can, I don't know if you can remember, let's go back to the shift time categories. There was a excess column. Now usually the excess is no pay, so that is used then if you don't want to pay any overtime before the shift starts or after the shift starts. So I'm going to use that column. We're going to need to add these time slots, like I said, to specify the periods of when this, where the hours get allocated to. Now a day is always 24 hours long. So we're obviously going to run this from 0 till 24. We're going to start off this at 0-100 hours. And then, like I said, anything before 7 o'clock, I want it to be allocated to the excess column because I don't want the employee to get paid for this. So we're going to change the end time of this time slot to 7 o'clock. The category that I want this hours between 0 and 700 hours, I want it to be allocated to the excess category. I'm happy with the rate. This is only used if you need to set up different rates. I'm also going to apply a rounding length. We can actually change this to 10 minutes. I want the hours to always round to the nearest 10 minutes, and I want the break to be 5 minutes, 5 minutes, which means basically anything up till 5 minutes will be rounded down again. Anything from 6 minutes and up will be rounded up to the nearest 10 minutes. Okay, so we've got our first time slot. We're going to add another one. I know I want to add another one for the overtime, so I'm just going to do that. Now this one needs to start where the previous one ended. So we're going to make this at 7 o'clock. We're going to end this off. Our shift runs from 7 o'clock till 4 o'clock. So this is going to be our normal time. I'm going to end this off at 4 o'clock. And the category that I want this to be allocated to is normal. I also want a 10-minute rounding. I'm happy with that. And then the third one is I want, if this employee works late, I want this to be allocated to the overtime column. So we're going to start this off where the previous one ended, which is 1600 hours. And remember, I said that the day is 24 hours long, which we know. So this needs to end at 2400 hours. Now, any hours between 4 and midnight need to be allocated to the overtime 1.5 column. I still want rounding on this. I'm happy with that. The next thing that we need to specify is the schedule. Now basically the schedule tells the system whether this employee has to work on that day or whether he doesn't need to come in that day, and also the schedules are used for if you apply any grace periods, or for your warnings for the employee arrived early or he arrived late, he left early. The schedule is used for that. You will also see he has a must be out by. This is used to generate errors. So in other words, if the employee hasn't clocked out by this time, it will generate an error in TNA. So the first thing we need to do is add the schedule. I'm going to add one for the normal time because I want to specify what his actual shift is, which is 7 o'clock till 4 o'clock. I want to give him some grace. So I'm going to leave that on 5. We're going to leave it, he's allowed 5 minutes late, he's allowed 5 minutes early, and the same with his end time of his shift. I want him to clock. This asks you, do you want this employee to clock for this schedule? Obviously I want him to clock in the morning and when he goes home. Do you actually pay him for these hours? Yes or no? These two columns come more into play when you're actually setting up your lunch, which we're going to do next. You'll see that we will actually change this. Your minimum and your maximum columns. This is where you specify what is the minimum amount of minutes before this is allocated as a shift. Now, some companies want it to be a minimum of 4 hours for argument's sake before it is actually counted as a shift. This is only really important if you do look at shifts. You base your payments of the employees on how many shifts they've worked. Then you need to put this in. Otherwise, the default is if you make the minimum 60 and the maximum is 999. The direction of the clocking, this is so that the system knows what is the expected direction. In the morning when he comes in, he's going to obviously clock in, and when he goes home, he's going to be out. So I'm happy with that direction. We need to also add a 1-hour lunch period. So we're going to go and add a second schedule. We're going to call this the lunch. And I'm going to say that this employee is allowed to take lunch between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock. I don't want to give him any grace periods because he's already got his hour lunch that he can take. So I'm going to set this all to 0. Do I want him to clock for lunch? Yes or no? I'm going to leave this on yes. And then is he paid for this lunch period? Now my standard hours is 8 hours. From 7 till 4 is actually 9 hours. So this hour is going to get subtracted of lunch. So in that case, my lunch is unpaid. The minimum amount of time that he can take is 60. The maximum is also going to be a 60 because this is a 1-hour lunch break. The direction that TNA needs to expect. When he's going out to lunch, he'll be clocking at 12 o'clock obviously, and then when he comes back at 1, he's going to be clocking in again. So this direction needs to be changed from in out to out in. Now you can either enter on your keyboard or you can just double click this and it will change the direction. Okay, so we've got our schedule for normal time, we've got our lunch time. Now we need to specify by what time he must be out by before an error is generated. Now because we've set our time slots from 0 to 2400 hour, the schedule needs to also end at 2400 hours. Okay, so once we've done that, we can just click on Save. Then under the Balancing tab, if you require balancing, then you would add it here. Now this is used when, let's say an employee comes in late, a half an hour, but he stays a bit later for a half an hour, so he works 30 minutes overtime. I don't want to pay him for that overtime because he hasn't actually worked his full 8 hours normal time. So what will happen with balancing is it'll take that extra half an hour which is in overtime and actually fill up his normal time to his standard 8 hours before it pays him any overtime. So to add balancing, we can click on Add. It asks you the first column is what category must it be looking at. We want to balance the normal time. I want the employee to work a minimum of 8 hours. If he hasn't worked a minimum of 8 hours, it needs to get this from the overtime 1.5 column. Now the reason I'm also choosing the overtime 1.5 column is if you take a look at our time slots, we've specified anything after 4 o'clock gets allocated to overtime 1.5. Okay, so we're going to get it from there. I also want him to only work a maximum of 8 hours. So if he's worked any longer than 8 hours, I want this to be sent to the overtime 1.5 column. Okay, so we're happy with that. If we move on to the holiday tab, what you specify here in this screen is if the employee doesn't work on a public holiday, is he actually paid for that public holiday, his standard 8 hours? Or if he's perhaps a casual employee, he would not get paid for that, then you wouldn't need to add any hours. What you do need to always add though is the all others leave type. Basically this just specifies, then it creates an entry there. If you had, let's say this was a casual shift, then you would specify all others but leave it on 0-100 because you don't want to pay them any hours. I'm going to give this employee his 8 hours, so if he hasn't worked on a public holiday, he gets his 8 hours in normal anyway. He gets paid for that. Okay, you can also, if you want to, let's say you've got another leave type like sick leave. If for some reason, if the employee is on sick leave, he only gets paid 6 hours, for argument's sake. You can specify the different leave types here. Okay, so I'm going to just leave this on all others. If you go to options, just to go through this, if you do have any bonus time that the employee receives in terms of if he works 4 hours, he gets an extra hour for free, you can specify that here. If you want to get into more advanced shifts, you can actually set up macro scripts, which will then be scripting that you can do all kinds of funny tricks with. Okay, but that we will not be getting into today, as this is just a basic shift setup. You can also go and specify the standard hours, which is 8 hours. And if they are allowed to take short breaks, we will definitely get that into that in the advanced shifts. Okay, so we've gone through all our settings on the left-hand side. I'm happy with that. We can close this. And that daily shift has been created. We need to also go and create one for the Saturday because we've only created a Monday to Friday daily shift. We need to create one for Saturday and then for Sunday as well. So I'm going to go and click on Add, and we're going to make another one for Saturday. And what I'm going to do with Saturday is if this employee does come into work, anything that he works will be allocated to the overtime 1.5 column. So I'm going to add under time slots. I'm just going to add one time slot which says anything from 0-100 hours till 2400 will be allocated to the overtime 1.5 column. I still want the rounding as before. If you go to schedule now, the employee is not it's not a requirement that he comes in on a Saturday to work. So in that case, I will not create a schedule for him because it's basically an off day or if required. I'm going to set this must be out by to 2400 still for our errors. We're not going to put any balancing on there. It's a Saturday, everything gets overtime. We're not going to set up any holidays either because generally a public holiday doesn't happen on a Saturday. If you want to, you can go and add that in. Just add the all others column line and then just specify the hours there. And then otherwise we're not going to specify anything under options either. There's no standard time because the employee is not required to work on a Saturday. I'm going to then just add another one quickly for Sunday. Sunday. And this is going to be the overtime 2 or double time. Going to do exactly the same from 0 till 2400. I want this to be in the double time column. Not going to add any schedules. Just going to set this to 2400 hours. Not going to add any balancing, no holiday, and no other options. So there we've got a full week, Monday through to Sunday. We're going to go and set up the payroll shift for this now. So once you've closed that screen, you need to go to the Edit Payroll Shift Setup. Here again, there is some examples for the day shift and for a night shift, which you can just take a look at. I'm going to create my own one. So let's add one, and we're going to call this the factory shift. Factory. Okay, you can put extra notes in if you want to specify, like a Saturday is overtime 1.5, Sunday is double time. You can just click on next. Now your payroll length, this will be how often you pay the employees. So would that be then weekly, bi-weekly or fortnightly, every 2 weeks, or if it's a monthly paid shift, you would set this to 31 days. I want this to be a weekly shift, so I'm going to leave this on 7 days. The rolling shift cycle is how many days do you want this cycle to be before it starts at the beginning again. Now our week runs from Monday to Sunday. We've got them working from Monday through to Friday. Saturday and Sunday is optional, and then it will start at Monday again. So that is a 7-day rolling cycle. Basically you've got your whole week. Usually if it is a weekly shift, your rolling shift cycle would also be set to 7 days. Okay, so we can just click on next. Your shift start date would be when your shift is going to start. Now, if your shift runs from, or your week runs from a Monday through to a Sunday, please make sure that the shift start date is on a Monday. If it starts on a Tuesday, you'd obviously start that on a Tuesday. So I'm going to just set this back because I know the 1st of April is a Monday. Now this is not too crazy if you've got a weekly shift. The only thing you need to remember is that if it starts on a Monday, you need to select a Monday start date. But when it comes to fortnightly periods and monthly periods, you need to make sure of the start date. Obviously, if it's a fortnight, you need to make sure that this falls in with your fortnight period. If it is a monthly shift, and let's say you run from a 25th to the 24th of every month, then you need to make sure that that 25th is also on a Monday, that your week can run correctly. Okay, so we're going to do a weekly shift for the 1st of April. We're going to start that, click on next. We're not going to set up any access time zones. We're not going to set up any limit codes. Some countries require a limit code for the employees. We're just going to do a basic shift today. We click on next. We're not going to add any extra macros with scripting. And once we're done, we can click on finish. So the wizard helps you quite a bit. So we've added, just as before with the daily shifts, we've added our code and our description with all the start dates. We need to now go and specify the details for this payroll shift. So we need to go and specify in this tab the Monday through to Sunday and which shift is actually going to be used on these days. So I need to go and add 7 days. We added a 7-day rolling cycle shift, so there needs to be 7 days in this list. So I'm going to add this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You'll see that the system automatically increments each day by 2400 hours, so you don't need to worry about that. You need to just specify then the names, which will be Monday through to Sunday. So I'm just going to keep this short. so that it can go quite quick. And we add Monday through to Sunday. Okay. Now this is, now we need to obviously go and specify what shift it needs to use for the Monday. If you then just click on the question mark, it'll come up with your daily shifts, and you can go and select the daily shift that you've just created. And you're going to do exactly the same for Tuesday through to Friday. Obviously, if your employees only work Monday through to Wednesday, you would only specify those. And then for the Saturday, we're going to specify our Saturday column, and for Sunday, our Sunday daily details. Okay, at the bottom you can see a quick overview of how your shift looks. As long as these day shifts fit nicely in between those lines, you should be on the right track. Okay, as with daily balancing, in our daily shifts, you've got weekly balancing, which means that this employee would be balanced to 40 hours per week. I'm happy with balancing it only on a daily basis, but it works pretty much the same. You would click on add, specify which category it needs to look to, the minimum amount, where it needs to get it from, and where it needs to send that to. You then got your rounding, which is also the same as in your daily shift, except this rounds the total amount of hours in normal to the nearest 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you set that rounding length to. Under holidays, we obviously specified in the daily shifts, we specified that this employee needs to get 8 hours on a public holiday if he doesn't work. Now under payroll shifts, you need to also specify the rules for that. So you've set up what it needs to do. Now you need to just say that you actually want that feature. So if you look under holidays, you'll see there's the employee receives standard time on holiday as a bonus if he worked, which means that if he actually comes into work on a public holiday, he will get his 8 hours standard under normal time. The second one is if the employees get standard time if he didn't work, which is what we wanted. We want him, if he doesn't come in, we want him to get his 8 hours standard. Now if he does come in that day and he works, we need to specify what category it needs to be allocated to. So in this case, I want, if he comes in on a public holiday, I want it to be allocated to the double time column. I don't want him to get the standard 8 hours plus the double time. So I'm not going to tick that first one. I just want, if he comes in for 5 hours, he must get 5 hours at double time on that day. You can also go and specify a separate holiday shift if you've got different rules, and you can also then go and process the shift as a normal working day if you would like to do that. Okay, under options, there is a few extra options here that you can select. Not going to set too much in this on the basic shifts. If you need to pay on day out, which basically works, your shift normally, if the employee comes in on a Wednesday and he works through the night until Thursday, sorry, then the hours would be allocated to the Wednesday. If you select the pay on day out, the hours will actually be allocated to the Thursday then. By default, usually you would pay the employee on that Wednesday that he comes into work, so it's very little that you would actually use the pay on day out, unless you require that for your company. Under macros, if you've got any extra scripting that needs to be done on a payroll shift level, then this can be allocated here. So we've set up that payroll shift. We're going to set up a night shift as well now. That is our day shift. We're going to go back to daily shifts now because we need to go and specify the night shift for our payroll shift. So we're going to click on add. I'm going to call this night. Your code is limited at 6 characters, so just make sure that you don't try and give this long name. Just select something which is as descriptive as possible, but not longer than 6 characters. I'm going to make this shift from 5 o'clock till 2200 hours, 2300, sorry, I'm going to make it till 11 o'clock. Click on OK. Now we need to go and specify the time slots. Now it's a little bit different with a night shift because your day shift starts from 0-100 hours till 2400 hours. Usually a night shift would run through the night, even past midnight sometimes. So with a night shift, you always start the first time slot at 12 o'clock, which is midday. So the night shift usually runs from midday, 12 o'clock, till the next day, midday, which is also a 24-hour period. That just allows that if there is any clockings over midnight, it'll be able to accommodate that. So we start from 12 o'clock. We're going to specify anything before 5 o'clock I want to have as excess. I still want my rounding. I'm happy with that. I'm going to create my normal time slot, and I also want overtime afterwards. So I'm going to add those two. 1700 till 2300, which is 11 o'clock. I want this to be allocated to the night shift column because we created a separate night shift. And then from 2300, now midday the next day would be 2400 hours plus 12. TNA sees the next day as adding those extra hours, so 24 would obviously be your day cutoff. Then if you want to go till the next day, you would add that 12 hours. So in this case, we're going to make it from 2300 to 3600, which will be the next day, 12 o'clock. Any time between 11 o'clock and 12 the next day, I want it allocated to the overtime 1.5 column. Then we're going to go and set our schedules, and this is going to be for the normal time again. The normal time for working is from 5 o'clock till 11 o'clock. I want to give them some grace. I want them to clock. They are paid for this, minimum of 60 and a maximum of 999 because I'm not too worried about shifts. We need to also go and add a tea time for these guys. They're not working very long, so I'm not going to give them a full hour's lunch, but I am going to give them a tea time of 20 minutes that they can clock. And I'm going to give this to them between 8 o'clock and 20 minutes past 8. They can take that. I'm not going to give them any grace periods as before with the lunch time. And I want them to clock for this, and they're going to get paid for this because I'm not going to subtract that 20 minutes off of their normal time. So in this case, we're going to leave paid to yes. They're allowed to take 20 minutes and a maximum of 20 minutes. The direction that TNA needs to expect will be out first and then in when they come back from tea. Now the must be out by, remember as per the time slots, we've ended it off as 3600 hours. We're going to set this must be out by to 3600 hours so that if the employee did not clock out by midday the next day, it'll generate an error, which you can just see in the user module and fix that. I'm not going to add any balancing on the night shift. I'm happy with them just getting what they need to get, but I am going to add on a holiday. If they do work, they're going to get their normal time, which will be 6 hours for the night shift. Under options, the only other thing that I'm going to add here is their standard time, which is 6 hours. Okay. What I'm also going to create here, instead of having a Saturday and Sunday, the employees work from Monday through to Thursday. They work the night shift. The rest of the week they are off. So I'm going to create another shift called off, which is the off day. And this is all going to be allocated to the excess column because these guys shouldn't be coming in to work those days. Anything between 12 and 3600 hours will be allocated to the excess column. They don't need to work on their off days, so the schedule we will leave on we'll leave blank. I'm going to set the must be out by to 3600. I'm not going to set up any balancing. They don't get paid any holidays on a public holiday. If it's their off day, they don't get any normal time for that because they wouldn't have worked anyway. And I'm not going to set up any other options. There's no standard time either. So I've got our night shift, we've got our off day, and now we need to go and create our payroll shift. So we go back to the payroll shift setup. We can add another one, which I'm just going to call night. I'm going to click on next. Once again, specify your payroll length and your role shift cycle. I'm going to leave this on a night shift as well. Your shift start date. My week is still going to run through from a Monday to a Sunday. I'm going to start that on a Monday, and I'm just going to click on next because there's no other steps that we need to do there. Okay, so we've got our night shift set up. We need to go and specify the details for that. I'm going to add my 7 days. Now I just need to see, I actually want to remove this, sorry. I'm going to start from the beginning because we actually want to add the first one and change this, because remember our night shift starts at 1200 hours. Now add the first one, change that to 1200 hours. As soon as you go and add the other days, it'll automatically increment it by 2400 hours. It's just slightly easier unless you're very good with maths. You can quickly add those 24 hours. So I'm going to change this now, Monday through to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I need to specify what shift needs to be used for which day. If we double click on the question mark, we can go and select our night shift. And this night shift runs from a Monday through to a Thursday. And the rest of the week will be off. And it's Saturdays off and Sundays off. Once again at the bottom, we will take a look at the quick overview of our shift. Everything is fitting nicely into those lines of our 2400. Just to show you, if for argument's sake you didn't start that shift at 1200 hours, or you didn't start this lines at 1200 hours, I'm going to go and select day shift just that you can see what happens if those two don't match. Your shift goes out completely out of alignment at the bottom. So always check that your alignments on the bottom fit in, those little blocks fit in exactly in between the lines. Okay, so we've got our Monday through to Thursday. We've got our off days. I'm not going to set up any balancing on a weekly basis. I'm not going to set up any rounding on the hours. I've got my rounding on the daily. On holidays, if the employees don't work on a public holiday, I want them to get their hours. If they do for some reason come into a public holiday, I'm also going to change this to the double time column. I'm not going to set up any extra options or specify any macros. So we've set up our day shift, we've set up our night shift. Now if we need to go back to the user module and allocate these shifts, we should be able to see those shifts available now. Let's go to shifts, click on the question mark, add, and we should be able to see those two available there. And that is creating the basic shifts. At a later stage, we will be doing the more advanced shifts where we can get a little bit more into detail. I'm glad you could join me for this training session, and I hope to see you next time.